Hello, and welcome to University of Utah Press's podcast. I'm Hannah New, and with me today is Dan Murphy. The judge and wonderful poet Angie Malenko chose Murphy's manuscript for the Agha Shahid Ali Prize in Poetry, and the book Estate Sale came out in the spring of this year. As a former tradesman, Dan Murphy now teaches creative writing and literature in Greater Boston. His individual poems have appeared in national and international literary journals. He lives with his wife, their 2 daughters, and a dog on a modest estate. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Hannah.
Great.
Yeah.
First, I would like to talk about the title, Estate Sale. How did you come across this title for the collection as a whole? And can you explain your thought process for coming up with this title?
Sure. Yeah. So Estate Sale is also the title of a longer poem in the collection. It's the longest poem I've ever written. The kind of conceit for it is this idea that, I've died, I'm traveling back to my house, there's an estate sale happening, and then it becomes a recollection of different memories and things of life that we tend to hold on to. I had this poem originally, I didn't even keep it in the manuscript. I wasn't sure about it, but I still like the idea of estate sale as a kind of representation of all these other scattered poems and ideas and memories, and that there was a sort of haphazardness to it. To some extent, it gave me a little bit of a break, right? It gave me a little bit of a way to say, especially in a debut collection, like, here's all these kind of mixed matched poems that there is a thread, but sometimes it's not as apparent. And so the estate sale was a way of trying to encapsulate that in some way.
I really like that thought of what would be at your estate sale. What would they keep to sell and what would they just throw away? That's a very interesting thought.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit morbid, but that's that tends to be, like, I think the poet's inclination, but it's also a way of thinking about what's valuable in our lives, what remains after we're gone in terms of that level of importance in our lives. I'd say estate sale seemed to kind of sum it up for me. Yeah.
Thank you. So you have a lot of Irish language poems in this manuscript, and when I called you, you were at the airport ready to go to Ireland for a wedding, I believe it was, right?
Yeah, for my sister's wedding, yeah.
So obviously, Ireland and Irish language plays a lot in your life. So can you explain what role bilingualism plays in your poetic identity and the identity of this book?
Sure. Yeah, my sister lives in Dublin. I just married her wonderful wife in August of last year. This is 2 years ago now. Yeah, so 2 years. Funny, when I was coming in here for the visit, we were at the same gate, and so I got to have the same slice of pizza and the same glass of wine that I was having after I had heard from you. So that was really great. Ireland, I would say biculturalism, it plays a real role in my poetry in the sense that I think, often languages embed within them certain ideas about how to live, how to be in the world. So Irish has its own particular kind of embedments of values that are kind of wrapped up into the language. And I think one of those values is a connection to the land, to the environment, to the inherited habitat. That's a particular interest to me. And so these poems themselves, you'll find are some might call them eco-poems. They are kind of elemental in some ways. They're basic. They go hand in hand with my proficiency in Irish, which is to say that many of them are in the present tense. In some ways, they show my limitations in Irish. I think they also are meant as a kind of counter to a more dominant language that has been handed by virtue of pure chance. In some cases, in many cases, misfortune, right? The misfortune of my ancestors, whether they're in Ireland or elsewhere in the world. English was this thing that is not native to my own ancestry. So trying to reclaim that bit of a sense of being indigenous to somewhere was part of the project here.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have you read an Irish language poem on page 1. Can you say that title for us?
Yeah, sure. It's Sneachta a Halvu, and it means holding snow.
Great. Yeah. And after that, I'm going to have you read the English
absolutely.
on page 45.
Okay. And thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sneachta a Halvu. Tumadama sa dorhudas, agus tamad ag brathnú. Sneachta a lasan fui honsalas carthlís. Mian meanian Nicolo go leid camarelti ag titum. Seo iad ar an talamh ar mróga inaghuid groige a derum le. Na milse tilla mienta le danamh. Balansi urd agus is féidir le in lava vig. Nor huiscim nis crua a dirsi is ea is mo a main shade. So I'll turn to the English translation. I played a bit of games with the readers here, not having the translations kind of back to back, yeah. And that's just me being mischievous. This is Holding Snow, and this is from my youngest daughter, Sasha. Holding Snow. We're outside at dark and witness snow brightening under cone of parking lot light. My daughter claims all of the flakes look like stars falling. Here they are on the ground, on our boots, in our hair, I tell her. Thousands more wishes to be made. She gathers as many as she can in her tiny hand. The tighter I hold, she says, the more they disappear.
Great. I like that you're being a little mischievous in this book of poetry, especially with the Irish language and mixing it in there. I like that it's a thought out choice that you made. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, part of it was thinking about what does it mean to even offer these poems in Irish in a language that many of my readers, I would expect, don't know. And what does that suggest about, again, what I value? I lead with this poem in Irish so that I'm not privileging the received language of English, that I'm giving some kind of prominence to the Irish itself, both as a nod, I think, to my ancestors, but also as a kind of a statement of where my affinities lie. Right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So Natasha Trethewey said this book was a cosmology of loss that turns grief into something almost tangible. And this now makes sense to me when we explain that estate sale is about you returning to your house. But how did this concept of loss as possession emerge for you?
Yeah, so I think the thing that we understand and learn as we get older is that loss accumulates. It doesn't go in the other direction. And so I don't think I experienced any more loss than is ordinary. But I certainly felt it in certain ways from a very young age. Different family members, relatives, friends. And so thinking about loss as a possession is about thinking about grief. How once there's this void left by the thing that's missing, whether that's a person or constantly elegizing, I think, parts of our lives. Even if it's not a person, it might be the coffee shop that had to close down, or part of our children's lives that we will not revisit again, for better or worse. And so we have this kind of constant elegizing, and when we have the voids that are created by loss, I think we also, in some ways, have this grief that takes the shape of it, fills it in some way. And others have talked about this more eloquently than I could, but just the idea of grief as a gift, that it's something that can remind you and recall and recollect that person, that thing that you're missing. I think about when I'm working on my house which is, as I say here, a modest estate. It's a ranch. It's like a tiny ranch. First moved in, it needed a lot of work, and it constantly needs work. So I'm always doing various projects, and as I'm cutting 2x4s or ripping a piece of plywood, just the smell of the pine, like of the cuttings of the pine, can take me back to working with people and family members who are no longer here. And so I can take a moment and I feel them, and I'm back in that place when I was in my late teens and early 20s, and that is a gift. So being able to think about it as a kind of possession, this thing that you carry around, is at least helpful to me.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Grief as a gift. So I was going to have you read The Last Wolf in Ireland on page 30, but you said there's an Irish language of it, and I have already forgotten the page number, but I would like you to read.
I think it's probably just a couple of pages before.
Yeah, I'd like you to read both again, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Page 26.
So I'll read the Irish first. It's called Machira Deranach na Heran. Option na conna garda fuil na guirc ag pentel an hair. Tá sé ag súl go máil a crochacht, agus spannin sé a chuad fiacla, agus ní hachan sé achtar síní, agus níl íon hiantach aige. Siúlann sé rih a scá tíomh le hialach agus drashacha a linlin na cuibhran. Athníonn tríhála a chríoch. Tá sé ag brathnú isú rifle in am gansacha agus uan hala atá chumlam, go fecinn sé anis an harga níos fuide ua. Siúlann sé luach casarnach agus stiltin sé casala cio an false.
Thank you.
And so in the English, it's The Last Wolf of Ireland. The hounds find him by the sheep's blood, painting the grass. He paces in figure 8 and bares his teeth and wears nothing but burrs and bears no guilt. He walks before his shadow along limestone and briars that line the paddocks. He knows by smell his place. He holds a gaze with the eye of a rifle in the time of sweaters and lamb, on land so clear-cut he can see an ocean rise beyond the plots. He treads the ash of understory. He refuses, like fog, this hedge.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So I have a few more questions for you. So what do you want readers to walk away with after reading your book?
Maybe the inclination to buy one for their friend or their relative. No,
that
as the marketing department,
yeah,
right?
As the marketing person
for the press. Yeah, just some kind of understanding that they've found some parts of themselves in the book, that they've seen themselves reflected in some way in terms of whether it's subject matter on a kind of superficial level, but maybe more importantly, something that they recognize of something they've experienced, and that they feel as though they've shared an experience with me.
Okay, this last one is a little silly, but if you or your book were an object at a estate sale, what would it be and why?
Okay. Right. So I think part of the kind of the logic, if we can call it that, in my longer poem Estate Sale, is this idea that I have all these things, they're being sold off, but the larger idea is about what am I leaving behind. So to some extent, I think if there were maybe a collected poems, that would be something I would appreciate, because that would mean that there's maybe enough to be collected, right? That maybe there's something that hopefully comes after this collection, and therefore there's something that somebody else can take away from it.
Great. Yeah. So thank you for joining me today. I'm going to end this with you reading one more poem, if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to go with page 17, Paul Baring.
Okay. Paul Baring. A pack of cigarettes, a languorous air, pair of spit-shined shoes, a plain black suit, 4 fingers worth of whiskey, handkerchiefs, a steady arm, unyielding grip. A new gray cap I fix and nod, the sod beneath my damp, cold feet, a softness shouldering this empty heft. Today there is this grief that has no bottom. Tolling bell, it rings with ritual. There's keening, wan and loud, and music in the ceiling. When we roll your body down the pews, I listen how they hymn. Imagine breath again. White pall of winter lifted, every thought a thread, your soul a linen snapping in the wind.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannah.